Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Marjorie Rawhouser. I'm the coordinator of professional development for Maryland's Online, and I'd like to welcome you to our second in a series of 4 short sessions this fall on accessibility. This one is called Finding the Right Website. Once again, we have as our guest speaker, Debbie Dorsey from Harford Community College. Debbie is an associate professor of health. She's also a Maryland Distance Learning Association board member, a Quality Matters peer reviewer, and a 2020 NISOT Excellence Award recipient. So Debbie, I will turn it over to you. Our guests, if you have any questions, please feel free to either put them in the chat or raise your hand. Debbie, take it away. Thanks.
All right, so I am going to turn off my video in just a second because I'm very animated and it tends to be a distraction. But just before I do, can you confirm that my title website title slide is showing?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right. So again, I am Debbie Dorsey. I am Associate Professor of Health here at, well, I'm at home right now, but at Harford Community College. What I'm going to do today as I talk through this is give you it from the perspective of faculty. Faculty, because I am faculty. And so I always give a qualifying statement that I am not an accessibility expert. I am educated on it. And as we go through these sessions, I always welcome it from others, different ideas, different tools. So don't be afraid to, speak up or, put it into the chat if you have some questions or if you have some suggestions as well. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and stop and then go right into my slide. There we go. So what we're looking at here, and I'm going to go back just a little bit here because I jumped way ahead. Oh, and I seem to be having some issues, which is not unusual with, let's try this again. There we go. Okay. So we're going to talk about some what I call a toolkit. These are resources that you can use to check your websites. And the reason why this is important is because in what we have now is an updated guidance from ADA, and that's our compliancy date, as many of you know, is April 2026. And for this particular webinar, what we're focusing on are websites. And the reason being is that prior, it was a little ambiguous as to whether or not websites that left your LMS or, left your college's website, whether or not they had to adhere to guidelines. And we know that that's not true anymore. So this is important distinction that if you have webs links embedded into your LMS, and again, I'm talking about this from the faculty perspective, we need to make sure that they're meeting accessibility guidelines. Specifically, we're talking about WCAG 2.1 level AA. And I want to make sure that everyone is clear on this. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up WCAG as well so we can take a look at this. And again, if you can't see it, let me know. If you have never had the joy of looking through WCAG, it is very, very detailed. It uses a lot of technical language. But what it does show you is success criterion. And one of the common misconceptions is that we should only be looking at success criterion that lists an AA. And that is not true. We need to be looking at AA because that is what the ADA is saying we have to meet. But we also have to meet 3 A's as well. So it's not like we can just bypass those 3 A's and go straight to AA. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, what I'm going to do is talk about different websites and these tools that we can use. And here, the greatest problems that we see are web PDFs, the navigation of a website, which almost is always exclusively about how it's coded, it's HTML coding, alt text, and color contrast. So I'm going to be going over some different websites. These are websites that we would probably use, we could easily use in our courses. And we're going to put them through these different tools. And we'll start off with HTML code sniffer. Bring this back up again. And this is a I forget what we call them, but web market. I call them different things, a web something, but basically you add it to Chrome. And what you can do is add it to your toolbar. And when you run it, it will tell you these different errors. Okay, now, like I said, I'm coming at this from a faculty perspective. So when I look at this, I look at how many red zone errors do I see. Now, this is impressive because it's nearly impossible to find a website that doesn't have at least one red zone error. And if I wanted to, I could go in and try to find out what that means. But I know as faculty, in general, what that means is the website, it looks at your ability to navigate through it. Okay, so initially, I found this website, I ran HTML code sniffer, and I thought, yay, this is great. This one so far meets this standard. Now let's take a look at the government. And in general, what we usually think is that .govs will meet the standards, given the fact that they're regulated by government. However, that is not always the case. But we're first going to run HTML code sniffer. 3 errors. I can live with that. So if I'm just looking at this web page and I get 3 errors from looking at it under HTML, I feel pretty okay about it. Now let's look at this one. This is a .com, and this is the trans theoretical model. And when I run HTML code sniffers, it has 17. Now, people often ask me, well, what's the threshold that you're looking for? And I usually look at if it's over 20, sometimes 25. To me, this is a red zone. Like I may not, this is a warning. This may not be a good website for me to use. I'm going to look at this one. Now, I teach nutrition, and it is really challenging to find calculators that meet standards. And so this was one that I was using. And then I ran it through HTML code sniffer, and it has 58 errors. So that is a red zone. Like that's something I said, oh my goodness, I have to stop using this. And then I went on a mad search for one that works, and I found one, but I'm going to come back to that in just a second. So here is where HTML code sniffer stops working. Anything that is a web-based PDF, it cannot read it. Now I'm going to come back to this one and show you how you can look at this under Adobe Acrobat Pro. But I also want to acknowledge that Adobe software is expensive. There are some institutions that do not have sufficient number of licenses to offer for their faculty. So I'm going to show it to you, but also with that acknowledgement that not everyone is going to have access to the tool. Okay, so now let's take a look at, there we go, our image alt viewer. And again, we're going to go through these same websites. Let me bring them back over. And Image Alt Viewer is a plugin right up here. You can see it. It's got the little magnifying glass. You can install it. So I'm going to go ahead in here and run it. And Lumen Learning, I'm actually pretty impressed with them. It's pretty good. It gives me the alt text here and right here. And that was impressive to me. Now, the other thing that we though need to keep in mind, right? We're faculty, we teach this. So as we're scanning through and running alt text, we have to make that decision if we think that that alt text works for us within the context of what we're teaching. But this part is important. Excuse me. As much as I talk, a lot of times when I talk, I start losing my voice. This is what is important for us to keep in mind. Alt text needs to be there. You cannot rely on the surrounding text to excuse whether or not you have good alt text or not, right? So if I am a person using a screen reader or some kind of assistive technology, if there is an image there, I should not have to rely on the surrounding text in order to understand what that image is. Now, when I go to health disparities and I run my alt text, now I'm starting to see some red flags. Okay, so you can see right here, there's empty alt attribute. That means that there is no alt text for those images. Now, this is again where I might make a decision. Okay, is it going to change the learner's experience if they don't know what these different pictures are? Some people, and I'm sure you've probably seen it before, will say, well, these are decorative. They don't take away from the meaning of the page. I am going to disagree here because what the ADA is saying is a person should have equal opportunity to everything, the experience. And so I want to plant in your head the concept of the culture of the page, right? Is it really decorative if it has an impact on the messaging, the culture of the page? We'll take a look at the trans-theoretical model. And we said, it's got some errors. It has a lot of alt text errors. And again, what's going off in my head is that this could be a problem. With the protein calculator, it does have alt text, but here's where the problem happens. It does not have it for the tables. And as you can see, this is important information, right? You need to be able to see this. And if it is not there, then that student, again, they don't have equal access to that information. This becomes exceptionally it's important regardless. But if you're going to test a student on their ability to understand this material, you got to make sure that it's accessible. And again, we said that, the article it's not going to work just because it's in a PDF form. Okay, so we did our alt image viewer. Now we're going to do a web aim contrast. And what I have noticed myself over the past couple of years is that people have been getting better with their color contrast. So what you can do is install the web aim contrast checker. You can see it's up here in my toolbar. I'm back on Lumen Learning. And it'll tell me, oh, good, everything passed. So from a color contrast perspective, this is good. And in fact, what we see is that actually passes the test for all of the websites that I have shown you. You can see it right here as well. Now, I was kind of cruising through some different things this morning, and I did actually find one that I've used in the past that's it's about yoga, and it did not pass the color contrast. And I thought, I really want to show this to you, but I will admit that I looked at it in the last possible minute, and so I wasn't able to get it up there for you. But there does continue to be web pages that will not meet this color contrast. And so again, this is a very handy tool that you can use to make that determination as to whether or not it's going to work. Now, I've already gotten to a place where there's just too many problems with this protein calculator. So because there's so many HTML errors, because there's so many alt text errors, it doesn't matter to me whether or not it passes the color contrast or not. I'm not going to use it. It's got too many problems. Okay, so we're going to stop looking at this one for just a second here. And now there is one thing that I want to show you about this one. All right, so this is the government one. Remember, we said, okay, this is good. We're not quite sure about what we think about the missing alt text. However, this is where we have to go a little bit deeper into the website to determine if this holds true. And so what I did was I selected a page within that particular website, and I ran an alt text. And there was some right here. Yay, this is a doctor. Oh, but there's all missing. You see, know the difference fact sheet. Well, that doesn't tell me anything, does it? I can go in and download a PDF if I want to, and run it through Adobe, or I could just say, you know what? Yes, that's great. There was alt text up here, but it's not down here. So this is one that I might not want to use. Okay. So we found that our gold star, it was Lumen Learning, right? HTML passed, the alt text passed, the color contrast passed. So if I was faculty determining whether or not this was a source, a website that left the LMS that I would feel confident using, it passes all of my scores, right? Use with caution. Okay, so that's our government one. And yes, we found that there were 3 red zone errors, but we can live with that. And the color contrast passed. But when I started digging around in that web page, I found that the alt text did not hold up, and it didn't hold up in places that were important. This was information that I would potentially need my students to know in order for them to succeed in the course. I personally would not use that trans theoretical model website. There are 15 red zone errors. And, in general, I could probably live with that, but the alt text failed. And the alt text failed in ways that made a difference to whether or not the student could succeed. The protein calculator, we said, let's just not use that one. 58 HTML errors, the alt text tables failed. Yeah, at least the color contrast passed, but that doesn't really say a whole lot for the website. Now, like I said at the beginning, this was one that I was distraught over because I needed to find a website that worked. And the other thing that I will tell you about this particular website, we see these HTML errors are more common. See, there's our 58 errors with inputs. Do you see how I would input different things here in order to do the calculation so it's interactive? This is where we're seeing a lot of problems with these websites that are interactive and they're not meeting our standards. Which, by the way, up here, and I didn't mention this, but you can see up here in HTML code sniffer that it does break down the different ways, the different lenses that you can look at this. But we know we got to meet WCAG to AA. So we're just going to keep it on this one. Now, what I found when I dug around, because like I said, I was a little distraught about this, is you're going to see it. It's a protein calculator that has 23 red zone errors. And the HTML is, or the alt text is missing on some of the ads. So let's pull that one up, is right here. Okay. And remember that I told you, let me run the HTML. Whoop, now that's not right. That's 131. When I looked at this one last time, I think this might be because of some pop-up ads, but let's try that again. There we go. So 16 errors. And this is actually a good thing that we're looking at right now. So do you remember that I said, oh, when I first ran it, it looked like it had 23. Now I'm running it and it has 16. And then at that one time when I first showed it has over 100. So what I would do if I saw that much of a range, and that is a huge range, is I would say, all right, if this page has been up there for a while, if it's been open for a while, and there are these pop-up ads that are showing and all of these other things, then that's going to tell me that the longer that it sits open, the more problems I might find with the HTML. And what do I do then? In my information that I'm giving to the student, what I will put is, if you use this calculator, be certain to periodically refresh your screen, right? So I'm giving them a heads up that, hey, this could be perhaps an issue for you. So let's just make sure, that you're doing what you need to do in order to be successful. And so here, this is where I'm finding that, all right, I could probably live with this one as long as I gave the students a bit of a caveat, right, of what they would need to do in order to be successful. So I was pretty excited about this one because, like I said, this can be an issue with inputs. The one thing that I just don't love about it is right here, this pop-up. And so again, I close it out. It's probably gonna show back up at some point. You have to sort of look at it as how important is this in my course, right? We got to make that decision. And then what can I live with? And if there are things that I can, I'm kind of on the fence about, but I think it could be a decent tool for students to use, then I need to give them more information about how to use the tool. So hopefully that made sense. Now, before we switch gears and I can answer some questions, I want to go back to this one. This was that PDF. And remember, we said, hey, none of the tools will work on this one. So I want to look at this under Adobe Acrobat. So I'll bring it over here. And again, acknowledging that not everybody is going to have access to it. But if you do, and this is important, this is going to be where I give you the speech about don't scare your faculty. Okay. So what I want for us to consider with this is a tool that we use to determine whether something is accessible, not a tool that we use to fix problems. I did an Adobe Acrobat workshop a couple years ago, and just from a faculty perspective, I thought I was going to lose my mind. You can use Adobe to fix things, but it really truly is beyond the scope of what we should expect our faculty to be able to do. But I want to say, this is a journal article. We give journal articles to our students all the time, right? So I've got this accessibility checker, and I'm going to run it. And I'm going to look at this side, and wow, there are a lot of problems. So within the document, first of all, the permission flag failed. So that tells me that even if I wanted to try to tag it, it probably wouldn't let me. The tagging is not good. Primary language usually is fixable, but like I said, do we really want to ask our faculty to do that? There are many problems with the tab order, and tab order means how the student navigates through this PDF. There are issues with alternative text. There are issues with tables. This is a problem PDF. I would not use it. And what you're going to find, this is really a challenge for us in teaching. Can we find PDFs that actually pass our accessibility checkers? Now, I know what question I will get asked, and that is, well, Debbie, what if I go in and I just, I have Ally put in the tags, or I use this Adobe to put in the tags, and I will give you a huge warning on that, is that just because something is tagged does not mean that it is tagged correctly. It's exclusively looking at, oh, so okay, this is tagged, but it's not looking that the tags actually work to make this PDF something that a person can understand and navigate. Okay, so that is what I have for you today. And I am interested in hearing some questions, things that you might want to share, interesting things. Like I said, I love to find out more about other tools that people have. So
Thank you, Debbie.
yeah.
I actually have one question. Could you go back to when you talked about the alt text on the table? Um, because does a screener not read a table as a table with rows and columns? So I guess I'm wondering what the advantage of alt text is, or what that does for you.
Well, there's two things that could happen. One is that it might not read the table at all. Tables are just notoriously bad for meeting accessibility standards. And so where that is concerned, when I look at what I'm going to go back to, and let me see here, I'm going to share again. And we'll go back into our protein calculator. See how it had 58 errors? What that's going to suggest to me is that these tables are not accessible. But additionally, now, am I sharing? I'm not sharing, am I? See, I always Let me see here. Let's see if we can fix this. There we go. All right. Everybody can see this one now. What this is telling me is with all of these HTML errors, these are probably not, they're probably not set up correctly. So the fact that they don't have alternative text in them is just even more reason why we shouldn't be using them. Okay, other questions at all? I see there's things in the chat, but I wasn't sure whether or not those were questions or if it was just people signing in.
See some people, someone asked about getting HTML code sniffer, and I see Nicole put the link in there to get the code sniffer browser extension. I don't know if you want to put the other links in there as well. Debbie, you had some other links in your slide. If you want
I
to copy
did.
those into the chat, maybe
Well,
people,
actually,
or
I have a PDF
oh, that's
that
gonna be coming out.
everybody
That's
will
right.
be
That will come
getting.
out. That's right.
Yeah, that's gonna
Yeah,
have all of them in there.
okay, yeah. So if you registered for the webinar, you will get the PDF with all of the links and all this information.
All right.
Anything else? Another thing I would say, if anyone has other questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat or raise your hand. But I would say that it seems, I don't know what you have to say about this. It seems overwhelming for the faculty to go to a website and then check that website. They have to check every link from that website and then every link from those links. I feel like it's really, it could be very overwhelming and unreasonable, I guess I would say.
Yes. So that's a good point. And I think that kind of speaks to a bit of design, meaning rather than have and in some cases, we do want our students to navigate things like databases, right? But in that particular case of the NIH website, what I might want to try to get at is what is the final destination page? Like, where is that page that I want them to really, be able to understand the most? So, and then run your HTML through there. What I was showing you with that one is that a landing page can be deceptive. You can land on that and go, oh, okay, this should be fine, right? And then when perhaps you just kind of create that sense, that false sense of this is good, such that when you get into another page within that website, you don't even run it because you're like, oh, well, this page was good. I assume that the rest of it is good. So we always want to be running these things on the final destination, right? That's what's important.
Yeah, Wendy also noted that possibly people out of fear of doing it wrong might just remove all their links. That's not really the goal of this, hopefully. But I can see where people might be frustrated and might do that.
I think the frustrating part is then going through and trying to find what will work. I've spent literally a half hour digging through protein calculators to find one that worked, find one that, kind of as much as I could met within that spirit of valid resource. Some of the ones that I found were like, build muscle or lose weight, right? So I don't want to use those. Those are not reputable sources of information. So I really did have to dig, and I don't want to give this sense that this is an easy thing to do, that, finding replacements, it's going to be time intensive, but these are tools that can help you make those decisions.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and put up the completion slide if people need to copy that or take a screenshot of that. And I'm also going to put in the chat a link to a post-webinar survey. If you would please kindly fill that out if you have a chance. You're also going to get that in an email that comes out with Debbie's slides as well. So you'll have another chance to get that link. And if there are any other questions, please feel free to continue to raise your hand or just go ahead and ask your question.
I know I'm very thorough.
That was very thorough.
All right.
Well, thank you very much. If there's no other questions, thanks again, Debbie. Yes, Debbie is going to share. You will get a PDF of this PowerPoint file in an email. If you register for this, you'll get it the next couple of days. So it'll be coming to you.